When the names Orville and Wilbur Wright are mentioned, the beginning of aviation is often the thought that follows. But history is changing, and it may be time to add another name to that conversation.
When you think of aviation, the first name that comes to mind is the Wright brothers, right? But could you believe that around the same time, a Pineville, Louisiana man patented his plan for the first airplane?
It's a story that it truly is unbelievable, and not only unbelievable that it happened, unbelievable that it's being ignored until 2023.
African-American and former slave Charles Frederick Page invented the airship and patented his version before the Wright brothers. Why he is not known by every schoolboy and girl today is a sad mystery that needs to be corrected. Paul Leo Ortega also invented the working, passenger-carrying version of the helicopter. Why he is also not better known is a sad mystery. What is also a strange coincidence is, both men lived about 2 miles from each other during their lives in central Louisiana. Welcome to yet another interesting video segment. Today we are taking a dive at the forgotten black aviator who soared the sky before the Wright brothers. Before we continue, be kind as to hit that like button and support us further by sharing video with your families and friends to keep spreading our eye-opening black narrative. Also subscribe to help in building the rising membership of this channel. Your support counts a great deal. Now come with me, this is going to be touching. In the annals of aviation history, Charles Frederick Page's name has been conspicuously absent, overshadowed by more celebrated figures like the Wright brothers. Yet, his story is one of remarkable innovation and unyielding resilience in the face of systemic racial oppression. Born into the harrowing reality of slavery, Page taught himself to read and write and ventured into the realm of aviation, patenting an airship in 1906, a feat that absolutely predates the Wright brothers' patent. The significance of Page's invention cannot be overstated. It was not merely an airship. It symbolized a technological breakthrough and a bold leap into a future where flight would become a pivotal part of human progress. However, Page's achievement took place against the backdrop of the Jim Crow era, a time characterized by relentless white supremacy and racial segregation.
It was shipped, and something happened. Now, due to the Jim Crow prejudice of that time, we firmly believe that it was stolen and destroyed.
These were years marked by the systematic denial of opportunities and recognition to black Americans. More insidiously, these years were marked by lynchings of black people who committed the cardinal sin of becoming successful in the plain view of their white counterparts. This stark reality deeply impacted the course of Page's life and work. Page's story is not just a tale of a forgotten black inventor. It is a narrative that speaks volumes about the eraser of black contributions to society and the tenacity and ingenuity of an individual who dared to dream and create in an era that sought to stifle such aspirations based on race. His journey, shrouded in the shadows of racial prejudice and historical neglect, compels us to question and challenge the biases that have long permeated our historical records. In understanding Charles Frederick Page's legacy, we must acknowledge the corrosive impact of white supremacy that not only hindered his personal aspirations, but also veiled his contributions from the world. It is a stark reminder of the countless black innovators whose stories remain untold, their achievements unrecognized, due to the systemic racism embedded in our society. This is why Black History Month was created in the first place. The journey of Charles Frederick Page began in the most oppressive of circumstances. He was born into enslavement. This brutal system not only deprived individuals of their freedom, but also systematically denied them access to education and knowledge on the pain of mutilation and death. The early years of Page's life were marked by the harsh realities of bondage, where learning opportunities were virtually non-existent for African Americans. Page demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to self-improvement and education despite these formidable barriers. In an era when teaching enslaved people that to read and write was often prohibited and could even be punished by law, Charles Page's pursuit of literacy was a radical act of defiance. He taught himself to read and write, a remarkable achievement considering the systemic efforts to keep people of African descent in a state of enforced ignorance. This self-education was not merely an academic endeavor, it was a powerful tool for resistance and empowerment in the face of oppressive racial policies. Page's inspiration for his airship invention came from observing the flight of dragonflies. His family recounts that he would spend hours watching these insects, fascinated by their flight dynamics. The story goes that he would watch those things in flight for hours at a time, and I assumed that it's where he got his inspiration to build an airship. That is Joseph Page, talking about Charles Page, who happened to be his grandfather, a farmer and timberman in Pineville, Louisiana. Granddaughter Katty Page Williams heard the same story. At an early age, I was told that he had this invention, the airship or the airplane, says Katty. This observation had led him to conceptualize and eventually build an airship around 1903, coinciding with the Wright brothers' developments in aviation. Page's innovative approach to flight was rooted in the natural world, reflecting a keen sense of observation and creativity. Page got a patent for his airship in 1906 before the Wright brothers. But Page's story takes an unusual turn. He planned to enter his airship in a competition for a $100,000 prize at the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis. He took his life savings, he built a working model, tested it at his home in Pineville, and then shipped it off by train to St. Louis, Missouri, where he was going to fly the airplane in St. Louis, Missouri, and then become a chapter in all of our history books, says Michael Wynn. But the aircraft never arrived at the World's Fair. His plane was destroyed or stolen, possibly due to the fact that he was an African American, says Wynn. I think that because he was a black man who had the audacity to try something that had never been done before, it's probably one of the reasons why the model disappeared and the history was never corrected to show that, says Joseph Page. Charles Frederick Page's airplane was somewhat primitive compared to the Wright brothers. It did have its own engine for horizontal movement, but it actually relied mainly on balloons and was called an airship. However, there is no record of Charles Page ever building another airship, but there is a renewed effort in the city of Pineville to publicly recognize his achievements. Joe Page says, he had to care for his family. He just never saw an opportunity to gather that amount of money again and deny his family of a decent living, so he never pursued it again. His granddaughter Katty Williams believes his airship could have won the competition. I think it was actually number one, probably found by someone who didn't want it to get there and was destroyed, or it was stolen, Katty says. Here lies Charles Frederick Page, a black man who was never recognized for his contribution to aviation, but instead of giving up, he became a farmer and a family man. He made bricks, he made coal, which was fuel at that time, commonly used for, and it was a number of things that he tried to do to better serve the community, says Joe Page again.
I think Page deserves that whenever the Wright brothers are mentioned, Page should also be mentioned to some extent in our national history books.
Frederick Page's airship, an extraordinary testament to his ingenuity, showcased several innovative aspects that distinguished it from other early flight endeavors. Unlike the Wright brothers' fixed-wing aircraft, Page's design was centered around a lighter-than-air concept, using buoyancy as the primary mechanism for flight coupled with powered propulsion and directional control. This approach starkly contrasted the aerodynamic principles exploited by the Wright brothers. Charles Frederick Page's airship incorporated a unique dual-balloon system, a radical departure from the standard single-balloon designs. These balloons were not merely for show, but integral to the ship's functionality. The design allowed for greater control over ascent and descent, a crucial factor in the safety and maneuverability of early airships. The innovation lay in the ability to adjust the volume of gas in the balloons, thereby controlling the buoyancy and altitude of the airship. The airship also featured a hull resembling a sailboat, which housed the key operational components. This included a gas engine that powered a propeller wheel at the rear, providing forward thrust. Including a rudder for steering was another critical element, allowing the pilot to navigate the airship more precisely. The Wright brothers' aircraft, which made its first successful flight in 1903, relied on heavier-than-air flight principles. Their flyer utilized wings for lift, an engine for propulsion, and a system of cables and pulleys for control. The Wright brothers' work pioneered controlled powered flight in a heavier-than-air machine. The timeline of Charles Page's patent is particularly significant. His airship was patented in 1906, 3 years after the Wright brothers' first flight, but before their patent in 1909. This chronology suggests that while the Wright brothers were making strides in one approach to flight, Page was concurrently exploring a radically different path with his airship design. writer and amateur historian Michael Wynne is trying to rewrite a missing part of aviation history. He collected newspaper stories, drawings of the airship, and Page's 1906 patent. It's a story that truly is unbelievable, and not only unbelievable that it happened, unbelievable that it's being ignored until 2023, he says. Page's invention, therefore, stands as a remarkable but primarily silenced milestone in the history of aviation. It represents an alternative route to the dream of flight, pursued in parallel to the more widely acknowledged achievements of the Wright brothers. The contrast in their approaches to solving the problem of human flight underscores the rich diversity of thought and innovation that characterizes the early history of aviation. The trajectory of Charles Frederick Page's life and his airship invention was significantly impacted by the insidious force of white supremacy. Racial prejudice not only created systemic barriers for black inventors like Page, but also played a crucial role in the eventual sidelining of their achievements. In an era where black success could mean a death sentence or an entire town being burned to the ground, to be a black inventor was a revolutionary act in and of itself. The most painful example of this was his airship model's mysterious disappearance. Scheduled to be showcased at the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis, the model has yet to arrive. The prevailing belief, supported by historical context and family testimony, suggests that the model was likely stolen and destroyed, a victim of racially motivated sabotage. This theft was not just a loss of a physical model, but a symbolic erasure of black innovation from the narrative of aviation history. The climate of white supremacy during this era was characterized by a systemic denial of recognition and opportunity to black individuals. This denial extended to intellectual and creative achievements, where black inventors often saw their contributions minimized if not outright ignored. In worst-case scenarios, racists would steal inventions, legally take patents through racist courts, or even assassinate black people in order to take credit for their work. This cultural and institutional evil systemically erased black achievements from mainstream historical narratives, reinforcing a skewed perception of history that predominantly highlighted white accomplishments and setting our society back in unmeasurable ways. The disappearance of Page's airship model had profound emotional and financial impacts. This event represented not just a personal setback, but also a broader narrative of the challenges faced by black innovators due to racial barriers. The loss of the airship, in which Page had likely invested significant resources and hopes, would have been a devastating emotional and financial blow. Confronted with the harsh realities of racial discrimination and the theft of his work, Page was forced to redirect his focus away from aviation. This shift was not just a change in professional direction, but also a poignant example of the forced redirection of black talent due to racial barriers. Page turned his attention to serving his community and family, engaging in various entrepreneurial activities. This change, though born out of necessity, demonstrated his resilience and adaptability. Page's redirection towards community and family endeavors highlights a common theme in the experiences of many black individuals during this era: the necessity to adapt and find alternative paths to success and contribution in the face of systemic racism. It is a stark reminder of how racial barriers not only altered individual destinies but also potentially deprived society of the full extent of black innovation and creativity. Recently, a burgeoning effort has been made to recognize Charles Frederick Page's groundbreaking contributions to aviation. One of the most significant acknowledgements has been unveiling a historical landmark in Pineville, the city where Page lived and made his remarkable invention. This landmark is a tangible reminder of Page's contributions and symbolizes a broader movement to rectify historical oversights. Wynne has uncovered local newspaper articles and reports from 1904 recording the outstanding feat of flight by a black man and his airship. His research even further led him to find Charles F. Page's patent predates that of the Wright brothers. I think Page deserves that whenever the Wright brothers are mentioned, Page should also be mentioned to some extent in our national history books. The innovative accomplishments of Page are not only confirmed by historical record, but have lived on through family lore, and Joseph Page, Frederick's grandson, is glad his accomplishments are finally being recognized. For our grandfather to finally be recognized for his contribution to aviation, it's a significant event not just for our family, but also for central Louisiana. The story of Charles Frederick Page is more than the tale of an overlooked inventor. It's a narrative that encapsulates the pervasive impact of white supremacy on black excellence. Page's experience underscores how systemic racism can distort our understanding of the past, silencing diverse voices and burying significant contributions under the weight of prejudice and discrimination. As we reflect on Page's legacy, it's crucial to recognize that his story is not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of historical neglect. We must commit to a more inclusive and truthful representation of history that acknowledges the contributions of black pioneers like Charles Frederick Page. This commitment must go beyond mere recognition. It should be an active endeavor to explore, understand, and celebrate black people for the intellectual powerhouses they are. However, in the spirit of this commitment, we must continue to seek out and elevate the stories of those who have been marginalized in our historical narratives. That brings us to the end of this video segment, and if you did learn a thing or two, do kindly share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. We are always delighted to pick from them. Also, don't forget to support our works by hitting on that like button, share with your families and friends to keep spreading our eye-opening black narrative, and kindly subscribe to help in building the rising membership of this channel. Your support means a lot. Thank you for watching.